What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we just started February, and when you know it, there was a Nintendo Direct rumor that started making the rounds very, very rapidly, as it was apparently vetted online. Well, we have some clarification update around that entire situation. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony actually responding and even calling out Bloomberg in a recent report surrounding production for their next big release. And we'll also be talking about Amazon, who apparently is going all in on Tomb Raider. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with a whole bunch of Xbox 360 games that are apparently being delisted, and you will no longer be able to purchase them on the Xbox 360. This sort of spiked up online and had a lot of concerned people looking around like, wait, these games are just going to be completely removed from the storefronts. Well, Gamatsu did get some clarification around this, which we can see posted up over on their website, where they say 46 games be delisted from Xbox 360 Marketplace on February 7th. Now, the delisting will not affect ability to purchase titles available on Xbox One or Xbox Series consoles. They had an entire statement from a Microsoft representative just clarifying and make sure everyone knows this is specifically for the Xbox 360 store, as in if you're buying from an Xbox 360 console, games like Lost Odyssey, Jet Set Radio, Blue Dragon will not be available any longer, but if you've already made the purchase and it's tied to your account, you should be able to re-download any of these games. Now, the list, it's pretty long, and there are many good games in there, even titles from the Assassin's Creed series, things from Call of Duty. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on, but fortunately, if you're on, say, the Xbox One or the Xbox Series, you won't be affected. But yeah, if you're still rolling on the Xbox 360 and you thought about making some purchases, you might want to do that before February 7th. Also, we do have an update for the Star Wars Jedi Survivor release date. It was originally set up to come out March 17th, but it appears the team at Respawn needs a little bit more time. They posted this up over on Twitter with the following statement: in order for the team to hit the Respawn quality bar, provide the team the time they need, and achieve the level of polish our fans deserve, we have added 6 crucial weeks to our release schedule. Star Wars Jedi Survivor will now launch globally on April 28th. All right, so we had a couple of weeks to play through Jedi Survivor before Zelda Tears of the Kingdom hits, but I guess technically this then kind of gets out of the way, or at least gives us some more time with something like Resident Evil 4 Remake. I mean, we already talked about how 2023 is quickly starting to fill up here, and taking additional 6 weeks, especially since it seems to mostly just be about polishing the game, getting rid of any bugs, and just the overall presentation, as opposed to, hey, we need more time to just complete the game itself, I think is great, because Jedi Fallen Order, while I really like that game, there were noticeable bugs and glitches and other things going on. You could kind of tell this was Respawn stepping out of their comfort zone, doing something like a 3D action adventure Star Wars game. Now getting a bit more time here, getting closer to release, I think is just a good idea. Gotta wait a few more weeks, not a big deal if the product itself is better for it. Oh, and just a quick update to a story we had recently talked about with The Crew 3. It's now been officially revealed. We can see this over on VGC. They put out an entire trailer, mostly just showing the studio and them kind of working on the game, as opposed to a large section of the game itself, but it is indeed set in Hawaii. It's the open world racing series, and they say Motorfest will allow car lovers to fulfill their ultimate action driving bucket list through a series of tailor-made races, themed events, and other unique challenges. It is releasing 2023 for PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X, S, Xbox One, and PC, that through the Ubisoft Store and Epic Games Store. So appears don't be a Steam release anyway, right out of the gate. But good to see, I guess, another entry in the Crew series, especially for longtime fans. We'll just have to wait a bit longer to get that exact release date, but does appear to be coming out this year. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with PlayStation VR 2. Sony looking, of course, to launch this in about 3 weeks towards the end of February. And I will say the excitement, the reaction to some of the reveals for games, it's been kind of mixed. I don't know if we have that big time release that everyone looks at and goes, well, I need to get a PlayStation VR 2. Sure, Horizon Call of the Mountain could be interesting, but I think if maybe you had like a Half-Life Alyx or just something a bit more substantial from Sony Studios, it might be a bit easier to go out there and spend more money on an accessory than what the console itself costs. But there was a report that was posted up from Bloomberg that makes the release maybe look a little less confident. Take a look. This over on Bloomberg, where they say Sony reduced projections for the initial launch of its PlayStation VR 2 headset dramatically after early pre-orders disappointed, signaling little improvement for the hyped but unproven virtual reality sector. The company halved its forecast for shipments of PSVR 2, which is set for a February 22nd release this quarter, to about 1 million units. Originally, as they say, it was set to be 2 million units or headsets ready for the launch quarter. They say the Tokyo-based electronics giant has told a supply partner to expect reduced display panel orders, according to the people who asked not to be named as the information is not public. The company now plans to ship around 1.5 million units between this April and March next year. So I want to make something very clear about this Bloomberg report. They specifically mention projections. Essentially, internally at Sony, they have forecasts. Like, this is how many headsets we think we're going to sell, and we're lining up our production accordingly. So you could come in under projections or forecasts. We talk about expectations within these companies all the time. We more so talk about it when it comes to like a game that releases. Ubisoft with Mario Rabbids as an example. Oh, it didn't sell 7 million, only sold 5 million. It's terrible, terrible news, right? Well, after this goes out, Sony actually responded, and this posted up over on gamesindustry.biz with Christopher Dring reaching out to Sony to have a response for it. PlayStation says it has not cut PlayStation VR 2 production numbers. And they go on to say, seeing enthusiasm from PlayStation fans for the upcoming launch, which includes more than 30 titles such as Gran Turismo 7, Horizon Call of the Mountain, and Resident Evil Village. And once again, over on Twitter, Christopher Dring just wanted to make it clear, saying, Sony outright told me we have not cut PlayStation VR 2 production numbers. There was no nuance in that. So once again, I'm looking at this, kind of seeing some PR speak here from Sony, as projections was really what was being talked about by Bloomberg, not necessarily production numbers. And that's something I've seen a couple of people bring up online now, and it's the way it works with PR and trying to respond even without actually directly responding, because look, we don't even know what the projections would be internally. I think the report of 2 million came from Bloomberg, I believe. So none of that came from Sony. Oh, we're expecting to sell 2 million. They keep that quiet inside of Sony. In this case, we find out about 2 million, and then we find out they've maybe lowered their expectations as they are observing the pre-order numbers. That way, say if they do produce, we'll say 2 million units, and they just happen to have more of them laying around than they expected, they don't necessarily need to then start upping the production numbers going into next year because they won't need as many. And I also want to point out, this is the second or third time that Takashi Machizuki has been called out by different gaming companies. Nintendo did it with the Switch Pro stuff, and now we see Sony do it here with the PSVR 2. And I believe before this, Sony called them out around PlayStation 5 production and PS4 production. So not the greatest run here for Takashi Machizuki when it comes to these companies just quietly going, well, yeah, I mean, he's right. They tend to push back quite a bit with him in Bloomberg, and kind of makes sense. If you think about it, if we're sitting here to believe that Sony is not very confident in the PSVR 2 because the pre-order numbers are looking soft, should we have a lot of confidence in an item that costs more than the PlayStation 5 when it comes to the software, the future of the headset? Because we're all kind of buying the PSVR 2, anyone who is, on the thought that, okay, eventually that big killer app or that big game will show up on the platform. But what if Sony looks at that and goes, wow, it's not selling, we're going to shift our development elsewhere? That's always the concern as being an early adopter with something like a PlayStation VR 2. Either way, we'll find out more after the thing comes out here in a couple of weeks, as eventually we're going to find out about sales numbers. Sony will tell us, or I'm sure other retailers, MPD, etc. So one way or the other, we'll find out exactly where this lines up with expectations. Next up, let's talk about this Nintendo Direct rumor that just started making the rounds all over the place. And I think it has to do mostly with a certain subreddit that appeared to vet the source of this whole thing. Well, for now, that post is just removed, which we can see how it is currently. It says Nintendo rumors provided to mods. In this post, the person who posted up here, a moderator, discussed the source and that they were able to somewhat vet them, but they had labeled the Nintendo Direct date as February 7th. Now, hours later, which, by the way, this started to explode online. People started dropping it everywhere. I know there are videos going up, there are articles being posted about this, but we can see hours later, a new post was updated after removing the old one, an update on the Nintendo Direct leak from earlier. We've taken the leak down for a number of reasons, including our own skepticism. The post in question was prematurely added to the subreddit with the moderation team's name attached to it. I take full responsibility for this, as it should have been a topic I went over with the new moderators before the situation happened. From here, they go over reasonings as to why, after examining that initial rumor a bit more, it didn't necessarily line up as much. Like, Nintendo has never done a February Direct on a Tuesday, although you could still kind of have one on a Tuesday random. I mean, it's Nintendo, you never really know, right? But they also mentioned Nintendo's investors meeting is also on the 7th, which doesn't make sense for the Direct to be on the same day. So I believe, really, if we're looking at this, Nintendo would have their 9-month earnings on February 7th, which you can see over on their investor relations calendar. But that's just the release. What they would probably do from here, based on what they did, for example, in 2022, is that they would have a financial results briefing that's all done online, as in there is no gathering of the shareholders, which is something they would typically do on the 6-month mark and then on the full year mark for the fiscal year. So could there be a Direct of some kind on February 7th? I mean, sure, there could be. There could also be one on the 8th. I just kind of threw that up there as a fun guess, but the more I'm thinking about it, with where the investors' information and online briefings would fall, probably the following week would make the most sense. But once again, we're all just kind of guessing and speculating out here, and you're going to see more and more of this stuff sort of pop up online. And sure, at times you'll see a press release accidentally go out a bit early. Someone gets the date and the sourcing even on a shadow drop that could happen, and then it starts to spread online. But something like this, it's definitely a major mountain of salt with this one. But they came out, corrected it, and I think currently we're still looking towards maybe the 2nd or 3rd week of February, if there's a Direct at all. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and the Xbox Series X and S seeing a price increase. And this is probably one of the worst regions for Microsoft to do this, because this is a place they should be doing anything possible to get Xbox consoles into consumers' hands. And that's in Japan. We can see this once again over on Gematsu, where they say Xbox Series X and Series S price increase announced for Japan. It's going to go up by 5,000 yen, which we have a lot of fluctuating exchange rates currently that's been going all over the place over this last year. But at the time of this recording, about $38 or $39 in terms of a price increase from where it is currently. This will go into effect February 17th, so just under 3 weeks. And yet not a great look in terms of optics, considering Microsoft was, I mean, they weren't there to gloat necessarily when Sony had to do it, but they were definitely making themselves very present that they weren't looking to raise prices at that time. But when they sort of mentioned the idea of prices going up, we thought, okay, games, they'll probably go to 70. Only makes sense. And then Game Pass, that'll probably go up. But now seeing the consoles themselves in a region where Xboxes aren't exactly flying off store shelves in Japan, they just make it less and less interesting then for consumers to take a chance on Xbox if it is even $38 or 5,000 yen more. That's still 5,000 yen more. And it is still weird to see game consoles go up in price years into the generation. Typically, we'd be used to hearing about slim revisions and ways for them to drop the price, but here we are. It's a very weird world right now, and hopefully in the next couple of years, things can maybe normalize a bit and we can get back to hearing how consoles are seeing discounts and we have different slim models that are smaller and quieter and all these different things. But for now, yeah, the Xbox starting to go up in price in different regions, with Japan being the latest one. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Amazon and how it appears they're going all in on Tomb Raider. We had heard previously that Amazon was publishing the new Tomb Raider game that could be coming up here sooner maybe than people are thinking, because last time they really talked about it, it was just that. They talked about it with Crystal Dynamics, and then they kind of moved along from there. It's Unreal Engine 5 and all of this, but something tells me it wouldn't be shocking if we even saw gameplay or a new trailer or anything before the end of this year. But as of now, it appears that Amazon is paying out some pretty big money for the rights to Tomb Raiders. We can see this posted up over on Fellowship of Fans. They say Embracer Group just sold, or they updated, they said leased, their Tomb Raider rights to Amazon for a deal that we can exclusively reveal being approximately a $600 million overall package, making it Amazon's second biggest commitment. $600 million, by the way, that's double, I believe, what Embracer paid for basically all of the Western branch of Square Enix, all those different studios and intellectual properties that included Tomb Raider. So if this number is correct, wow, Embracer Group, that's a pretty good business move, I must say. But this, again, makes sense because Amazon's already publishing the Tomb Raider game. You think maybe they would want to look around and do other forms of media to go alongside of it. Let's just say this new Tomb Raider game makes it out for holiday 2024. Could Amazon follow up the game maybe into 2025 with a movie or series streamable on their Amazon Prime service? I think it's very possible there. And clearly $600 million, Amazon's looking at Tomb Raider as a big time intellectual property that maybe just needs a company to really get behind it and push it forward with other forms of media to go along with the game. I mean, the games before, Rise of the Tomb Raider, great title. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, maybe not as good, but still high quality. And even Tomb Raider 2013, some people, that's the best one. So I think there's a lot of potential here if it's done right, and having the backing of Amazon putting out this kind of money seems like they're ready to take a run at it. But we'll wait to hear a bit more about this, as this appears to be the singular source that's now put this number out there, and I'll be curious if we get more and more reporting around what's a massive deal between Amazon and Embracer around Tomb Raider. And before we go to the comments of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, which full week in February do you think Nintendo is most likely to have a direct? Look at that, second week, 13th to the 17th, 46%. I think that's the direction I'm leaning in, but look at the second spot. 22% say there won't be a direct in February. What if this whole time we're building up and believing that there'd be a direct in February just based on history and there was nothing? That'd be a very long February then, wouldn't it? Because every week it's like, is this the week? And then it just never happens. But then you figure maybe in March, I mean, now we hear Nintendo won't even be at E3, so who knows what's going to happen in 2023 when it comes to these Nintendo Directs. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Super saying, I wish the essence of the E3 we knew, that is a jam-packed week-long digital events or showcases, could at least stay. I still think you're going to see a jam-packed week for E3, but if you also consider the fact now that these companies, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, Square, Capcom, the list goes on. They can basically anytime say, hey, we're going to show off some video games. People will probably show up, but it's maybe better for them if it spreads out, because then you don't have like just news everywhere, news on top of news on top of news, things get buried. For them, it's a bit easier to coordinate and find a week where not as much is happening and have the entire spotlight on their showcase. But yeah, it was definitely easier to plan around, I will say that. Whether you're someone who was going to take off work to watch this week-long event of just video game coverage, or you were going to try to do the coverage yourself, it certainly made it a bit easier and manageable to know when to be ready. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where Sony pushing back on that Bloomberg article around the PlayStation VR 2 forecast, production numbers, is a lot of PR back and forth on this one. But how do you think the PlayStation VR 2 will do when it does release later on this month? And then also, what about the Nintendo Direct rumors that are bouncing around all over the place? When do you think Nintendo will be ready to show off their next Direct event? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.